Dr. Andrea Martin was a professor at Worcester University for 19 years and taught many classes, including several on UFO disclosure. She has been working with a number of individuals, including herself, who have had extraterrestrial contact and believe that they are part of a Galactic Envoy program. And she's here today on Exopolitics Today to discuss her most recent communications and some important updates.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Great to have you back on the show, Andrea.
Oh, nice to be back on, Michael. It's not a whole lot to do, but we do have some shifts that happened upstairs. So that
well, I'm looking forward to hearing that, and I'm sure my listeners want to know what the latest is. So, let's kind of like just spell out a little bit better for people, exactly what is the Galactic Envoy program and how many people does it involve? I mean, there are estimates anywhere between 200 to 250 million star seeds on the planet. So how many of those are part of the Envoy program?
No, and you make a good point, and I bring this up with the people I work with upstairs, that we need, it's time that we get solid evidence. And we're just throwing numbers around, basically. So yes, I guess there's around 200, 250 million that they started out with. Recently, we've been told that most are not active, either because they're dead or because they're compromised or because they just gave up. So there's this, I can't say for sure what number is left and what is being activated now. What I've noticed from my own work is that a lot of people are coming forward, and they tend to be older people, and they think they're part of the group. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So with the Envoy program, can you explain how it works? I mean, is it like literally a couple, say, living on the Pleiades or some other world, are told about this Envoy program, which is ostensibly to end suffering on Earth and to end this galactic threat emanating from Earth and our solar system? So is it typically like a husband and wife, or could it be siblings? Could it be an entire family that joined the Envoy program?
Anything. You could have people that joined alone as an adventure. I've met them. So I'm only going to give the information that I have from specific people that I've interacted with and the ETs that they work with. So some can be brother and sister. Some can be husband or wife and wife, or husband and husband. Some can be a child of somebody, can be a parent, that any combination, a cousin. There's usually, it's just common sense. So if you are from another planet, you have a family. And so you're born somewhere. And that you most likely negotiated with your family if you have a good relationship with your family. Not all extraterrestrial beings do. I've talked to many extraterrestrials who have a lot of conflict. And that might be why, because they don't get along with their mother or father, and they don't like the direction of their life back home, that they may have chosen to jump into this Envoy system. But it's any combination, really.
And I mean, do you know anything, or do you remember anything about how the Envoy program is presented to like extraterrestrials on their home worlds? I mean, is there like an ambassador or high representative for the Envoy program that just kind of like puts out, I don't know if it's a pamphlet or it's a hologram or whatever, detailing what to do to join and why it's important to join?
Exactly. The only one I would know of per se would be mine, which would happen on Era. And I'd imagine it's fairly similar to other 4D extraterrestrials that joined. So news travels, and there was information concerning the situation in our solar system, in this solar system here, that it was going south. You have the nefarious extraterrestrial groups that were beginning to make serious military arrangements with the Earth humanoids. And I think that's kind of confusing for a lot of people because they don't realize that the deep state is, well, first of all, they don't realize that Earth is a planet floating in a, it is just one of the planets that are involved with space politics. And it's a mess upstairs. It's been a mess upstairs for a very long time. And the Terran.
Can you explain that? You know, when you say it's been a mess upstairs.
It's wars. You've got all kinds of things going on. You got, slave trade, you got slave planets, you got oppressive regimes that are on different planets. I guess one of the classic stories would be the Umo and what they went through on their planet. You have planets that become uninhabitable. People have to flee. You have invasions. It's just the way it is. It's not a magical place where everybody's happy. It is very dangerous. I never left home. Traveling in space is definitely not an easy thing to do. So yeah, this one was going to be dangerous. And I think Alex Collier described some of what was going to happen there with the Andromedans. Some of the extraterrestrials have what we call like the looking glass technology, so they can see into the future and the different timelines and what's going to happen. So basically, Earth was going to be a Death Star. And the call was, what can we do? Because of the rather unique...
What do you mean Earth was going to be a Death Star? I mean, was the whole planet going to be weaponized by the Draco reptilians and used in galactic war?
Yeah. A jumping point.
How would that work, though? What would happen? I mean, there's 8 billion people on Earth. If the Earth was made a Death Star, what would have happened to those people?
Probably some of them would have been killed. A lot of them would have been militarized, which is what they were actually doing. You have the MK Ultra, Secret Space Program, Solar Warden. I'm actually going to get into that a little bit too, because that's kind of what happened. Who else was involved? The MyLabs. These were weaponization campaigns. And the goal was to, as most people are familiar with, poison, use technology, use frequencies, complicated extraterrestrial frequencies that were sort of not only satellite based, but sort of ricocheted off of different planetary systems from the moon and Saturn, and they just, enveloping the planet in this control grid. So the people would have been, as they were a resource that the Dark Fleet, which is intergalactic and has bases off planet, we're going to weaponize. Then that's how they do it. They just do it through mind control.
So with regard to the extraterrestrial groups that are involved in the Envoy program, and we hear the Galactic Federation of Worlds is behind the Galactic Envoy program, that the Andromedan Council kind of like put the warning out there that this is going to happen on Earth, it's going to be weaponized, and the galactic tyranny will start from here. Are there other extraterrestrial organizations associated with the Envoy program?
Yeah, I mean, I went through the Intergalactic Confederation. So
the Intergalactic Confederation, is that the same organization that Elena Danaan talks about, where these are galactic?
A lot of people talk about that.
Okay.
I have people that meet with them regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and those are the people that I work with behind the scenes. And as you know, and I've mentioned also on my podcast, I don't work alone. I work with at least 10 close associates, but many, many people that I have as clients, and just people who come in and tell their story. So I have hundreds of different testimonials that I bring together to see what sort of floats.
Okay.
You have different people remembering what their experience was. I have Arcturian starseeds. We have Andromedan starseeds. Those are the ones I've met.
Okay, so they're not necessarily part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds. They're just people from other civilizations that decided that they become part of the Envoy program.
Right. Okay. I mean, the Galactic Federation of Worlds is a translation of it. You can't translate extraterrestrial, I use a visitor, off-planet languages into English. It's sort of like translating, Chinese or Japanese It's not a direct translation. You have to use a transcription of sounds. So you see references to a militarization on Earth through some of the contactees back in the day, like Bob Renault. Bob Renault lived here in Massachusetts. He was a radio operator, and through that, he was able to make contact with the Kurendai people. And he developed a very, very close relationship. And this is all available through his web. Well, he's passed away, but through a still standing archival body of work with this guy. So he would go into their base, which is in the Berkshires. It's about 10-mile long base, quite a big base. They have another base out in California. And he went down there regularly. He'd come in, hey, Bob, you want to come? And it's very friendly. Then, as the years progressed, he noticed there was a vibe that changed, a darker vibe. And he's like, hey, what guys, what's going on? He's like, well, it's getting kind of hairy. And they evacuated the base in Massachusetts, and I'm sure they evacuated the one in California as well. He then saw military in there, extraterrestrial military, and this is a federation. So that would be my understanding of that. A similar situation happened in Italy, Ascoli-Piceno and Pescara, where the bases of the W-56s, the mass contacts, Stefano Brescia, their base was blown up. So the war on Earth began to heat around, well, that would have been earlier, the Stefano Brescia Pescara situation. That would have been before the Bob Renault situation. So it seemed like, according to these older archival testimonies, something dark was happening on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did you ever get to meet Bob Renault?
No, he passed a long time ago. I don't know if Frank met him. He met Gabriel Green, but I don't know if I don't know if Frank ever met Bob Renault. But excellent information right there. So
no, I've actually I communicated with him many years ago, but he didn't want to be interviewed. He just wanted to stay out of the limelight. He just wanted to stay in the background, which to my mind made him a kind of more credible person.
Right.
Because it was like it was dangerous for him. And that's how he felt. That it was dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know anybody really that I've met that I've had to basically pull teeth to get them to come on the show.
Yeah.
Most contactees won't step forward for sure, and they don't want any limelight. And I think that goes for that's why I'm the one that was made to step forward by my ET contacts. And that the people that talk to me are behind the scenes. They don't want to come forward.
There was one element in Robert Renault's work that I thought was very important and relevant to today, and that is essentially he talked about two benevolent extraterrestrial organizations that had a lot of benevolent ET civilizations working with them. One was kind of like more militaristic, more interventionist, kind of like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, as it's called today. And the other organization was kind of more pacifist and non-violent and more into spirituality and raising consciousness. And that's kind of similar to the Confederation of Planets that a lot of people talk about. And so Bob Renault talked about those two organizations like having kind of, they were on the same side, but yet they were like, they never really saw eye to eye. So does that exist today? Do we have a similar kind of differentiation today as far as you know?
So this shifted recently with all of the arrests in the Galactic Federation itself. They're on prison ships now, and they're being actually overseen by the Intergalactic Confederation on these prison ships. These were the Galactic Federation members that had made alliances with the Dark Fleet.
Okay, so the Galactic Federation of Worlds at some point was infiltrated, and those people that were maybe compromised in that process have been arrested and
yes.
Okay.
There was quite a shakeup around, according to Zoran, and Ika was not involved because he was here on Earth, so he kind of lucked out. But some of the more the extraterrestrials in the Galactic Federation military that didn't step back from the original contracts for Earth's liberation. Those were the ones that were arrested first. It's very twisted. So the ones that were our allies were arrested by some of the GFW who were the traitor types in the early 2022, around that time period.
Okay, so that's kind of a little hard to follow then. So the good guys were arrested by the bad guys
Right.
in the Galactic Federation in 2022.
Yes.
And so when did that shift? When did that turn around?
Pretty much right after, because they didn't have anything to show as far as maintaining that in front of the courts there was anything wrong.
Okay, so it's kind of go.
Yeah,
please finish your thought.
Trying to it was a threat, basically. It was, if you go against what we're doing here on Earth, there's a lot of sleight of hands that was happening. The negative, what we would call negative, individuals in the GFW had made arrangements way back with the MJ-12. And I think people need to ask themselves, why was the regressive extraterrestrial races, the Nebu, I mean, it was the Matra, all the Greys, and the different Draco reptilians, why were they allowed to actually go about their businesses on this planet, torturing people, weaponizing people, doing strange experiments, selling humans off planet? These are illegal. And it doesn't really matter if you have a contract to do it or not. And this is what originally was used as an excuse for all of this nefarious, by the millions of, it's just hard to imagine, and it's very dark. Why were all the abductions? Why were all the sales of humans? Why were all the sales of human food? Why was that allowed to continue on and off planet? That's not allowed in space. But yet, blind eyes were turned to illegal running of, basically like drug running, off this planet. You can't make a contract for something illegal. And when you that was part of the twisted narrative that these negative operatives in the GFW had used for decades. Well, we can't do it because of this. Well, we can't do it because of that. But ultimately, it's completely inadmissible for this kind of trafficking to happen in space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so some personnel in the Galactic Federation of Worlds were compromised by the regressive ETs, and they have been recently removed. Yeah. So is that why, or is that, well, I mean, because I asked the question about the Confederation of Planets. I mean, right. Is that why they have kind of kept hands off and just focus on consciousness raising and spirituality? Don't want to get involved in the hands-on intervention and stuff because ultimately you get compromised?
They were told, and this is what talking for some of my contacts who were working with some of the higher GFW officials who are the benevolent officials. These other groups believed the lie. They had been told, and I said, how can they believe? How can you do that? How could you lie to, And I guess the answer from upstairs was they were so far removed from the ground operations that the lie they were told was the humans aren't ready. The humans need to raise their frequency. And they believed that. That was the cover story.
So that's high-level operatives or personnel in the Galactic Federation of Worlds were told that?
Yeah.
I see.
They were telling that to the other councils and higher confederations. They're like, oh, they're not ready yet. They're still too violent. Look at their wars. Look at this. They're not ready.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess looking at the latest outbreak of war with Israel and Iran, I can understand why they would say that.
Well, of
I mean,
course,
I would say that.
yeah. Well, the wars that happen on Earth are created. They're not natural wars. Everything that these nefarious beings were doing and saying were to maintain the status quo on this planet. In fact, the beings on Earth, the vast majority of the population, were being tortured and enslaved and living in a very destructive system. So it wasn't about them raising their consciousness. In fact, we actually moved backwards. If you look through the history of contact from Howard Menger, Gabriel Green, Paul Villa, all those people, they were having direct and open contact. Ships were landing, they're getting on the ship, they're flying around, they're taking pictures, they're coming back. Then all that ended. We don't have a large number of contactees anymore. In fact, I'm not sure of any. I don't know. There may be some in a rainforest somewhere. I mean, we can't be 100% of it. There's zero. But we don't have any verified, open contact where people are getting on ships, they're taking pictures, they're being on we have nothing. All we have is testimony. Where are all the pictures that used to exist? Billy Meyer, all these things, videos of flight of ships and
right. Yeah. Well, there's a kind of former military guy who's a contactee that I've been working with for what is it, 17 years now. JP. He's got photos. He's taken photos.
They're great, but it's nothing like it was.
That's true.
Nothing, so that's a question we have to ask. It isn't about, something, we have to ask what happened and why did all the open contact end?
Right.
Why did it backtrack? And that is what we heard from Zoran upstairs, that it was from the nefarious, that they stopped all of that intermediary type situation where you had a lot of Venusians, but you had, Coma Berenices, you had Pleiadians, you had all kinds of people coming, and that was
who stopped that kind of level of contact, or at least allowing contactees to take really good photos, like Billy Meyer took a lot of really clear photos.
Them.
Who stopped that then? The ETs? Like the Galactic Federation?
Yes. Yeah. Because they wanted to really drag this out.
Okay, so the ones who wanted to drag it out and stopped that within the Galactic Federation, these were the guys that had been compromised or kind of like influenced by the nefarious ones?
Yeah, and we asked, well, what did they want to gain from this? And he said they wanted to, obviously there was some financially of different finances upstairs, but there was a financial gain, there was political gain, and also they wanted to use the humans as super soldiers for their interests.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, that makes, and we do have examples of that for people who were in the dark military, the 20 and backs and all that, telling stories about what they were doing upstairs, fighting all around here and there, and so it's curious. Yeah,
well, the super soldier material goes back some time. I actually talked about it in my first book that came out in 2004. I talked about the super soldier program in that book, so that was kind of years ahead of others, but then it's there, that people were talking about it.
Yeah, well, it's just, people have to be aware. This is not some fairy tale, and this is the biggest problem when we extricate Earth from the rest of the galactic sphere and make it look like it's something different. It isn't. Mm-hmm. You have many there's thousands and thousands of beings floating around up there on their planets and on their ships, and not all of them are interested in maintaining a, happy camper atmosphere. There are many, just like down here, that want to expand their territories, that want goods. It's just common sense. It's not a fairy tale. Yeah.
So you're kind of like really saying that, the Hermetic principle, as above, so below, as within, so without, that totally applies when it comes to extraterrestrial civilizations, that people who portray an extraterrestrial organizations as this idyllic, perfect, harmonious grouping that's just hopium. That's just pie in the sky.
All I can say, I've never seen it. So, I mean, you're talking dimensions. Maybe there's some dimension. I have a fellow that I chatted with the other night just because he knew about a lot of this several years ago, and we knew about this several years ago. And he works with ninth dimensional. Excuse me. He works with the 9 from the void, but he also works with 11th dimensional beings very closely. And they're extremely angry and frustrated with what's happening for Earth. Some of these beings that he works with are over 28,000 years old. They've been waiting for Earth to be finally released from this nefarious group, Anunnaki, Draco, and Greys, blah, blah, right? For 28,000 years. So they're pretty angry. And you can only push so much. You can't force. And this fellow actually meets with the 9 as well. I've met with the 9 myself. And they're not happy with what's going on. A lot of extraterrestrials are not happy with what's going on.
Well, just kind of coming back to that issue, with this latest Israel-Iran thing.
I asked Ike about that.
Yeah, I know that President Trump, I think he was sincerely trying to stop that from happening. But at the end of the day, the military-industrial complex, the bad guys, if you like, just overwhelmed him. They just kind of rolled over him, and that's and I guess you look at that and you say, well, if you actually have a president, the most powerful person in the United States, that wants peace, that makes it part of his platform and appoints people around him to promote peace, but they get overruled by the military-industrial complex, then, I mean, couldn't you say, well, we're not ready as a planet? Because if even good people, you call them white hats, you call them Earth Alliance, whatever you want to call them, if they get overwhelmed by the deep state that just like creates another war, then imagine if all of a sudden we were part of the galactic civilization and we do that, we do the same thing, go to war against someone else.
We fit right in, number one. It's not safe anywhere. I understand people's desire to have this fantasy land of, and I desire that too. I want to live in a utopia. It's just not realistic. It's just not the way the world works, unfortunately. So the wars that you see on this planet are created on purpose. And I asked Ika about what's happening right now in Israel. What you also saw, I think, verifies what we're hearing from upstairs. They were cleaning up their own act. So you can't pay somebody's rent if you don't have enough money to pay your rent. So and I think the deep state took advantage of that situation. The deep state plan is to create a World War III, make a mess out of everything, and then come in as a savior, possibly create a blue beam situation, right? Oh, we need to all come together because aliens are attacking us. Let's all make a one world. And it's like, yay, 15-minute cities and everybody's going to be happy. That's their goal. I don't think now that's going to happen. I could be 100% wrong. You never know. Things can go, south or something. So I asked Ika that, and obviously the Middle Eastern situation is their first step, the deep state. They took this first step while upstairs, the Galactic Federation was trying to clean up its act. It has now literally, like within last week, I think, finally cleaned up the last of their issues. Replaced, this is another thing, replaced those operatives with proper military individuals for the extraterrestrial team. So now we should be once again moving forward. The disclosure narrative, as always said, has been usurped by operatives of the Dark Fleet, the Cabal, the Matrix, whatever, since MJ12. It was supposed to be released many, many years ago, but was always sabotaged. They're not ready. They're not ready. So, so all of these narratives were basically baloney. And this goes for all these other things like Prime Directive and all that stuff like that. It's does not apply to Earth. It never applied to Earth.
But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I thought that was really funny that you said that, the way, the white hats, the Earth Alliance were like kind of like overwhelmed, or Trump like had to give in, and Israel got its war, Netanyahu got its war, despite their efforts to have a diplomatic solution. That we'd fit right into the galactic scene. So you're saying that they're like that out there?
Same thing. Well, you can't. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's philosophy. People just looping and looping and looping into philosophy.
Okay. All right.
And it allows, when you have that kind of situation, I mean, it's anywhere. You're always going to have groups that are drawn to things like greed, and they're going to, find a way, like a mafia, to infiltrate, and they do.
Okay.
And yeah. So,
but I mean, if we as a people, as a civilization, haven't really been able to rein in at the deep state and the power structures that create war, you're saying that shouldn't preclude us from like open contact and becoming part of the galactic civilization.
And it doesn't. And the story is, as most of you put two and two together, you can figure out what's going on. The majority of Earth's population has no idea what's going on. They think they think all these wars are real. They don't understand the real history. They don't understand anything. And according to these 11th density beings that my friend talks to, they estimate that 80% of Earth's population, that's a lot of billions there, is completely unaware of any of this. They just think they live on a little bubble. When this is what the goal of the nefarious Dark Fleet Cabal Alliance was to shield this planet off, have their basically livestock on this planet, poison them, mess them up, put them in soul traps. And that's what they did over generations. And they did a great job, because how do we get, and this is what I tell upstairs, I said, how do we get our information to the population? How do we do it? Because we're only hitting small numbers. It's just layers of complications, which, now, hopefully, they're going to move forward. Ika told me what the plan might be, literally just talk to presses, because they're replacing staff. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards. They're watching, and I think that's key, what's actually happening there. And they will intervene secretly, and it makes sense that they're going to do it that way, because if they were to intervene openly just now, because of what I just mentioned, most of the world isn't ready for this. If they see UFOs shooting down missiles, they're going to do it a little bit. And there's been videos of that happening. But if you had open galactic war, even if it's benevolent to stop, most people are going to lose it. And then whatever remnants of the deep state are going to quickly, because people don't understand, look, the deep state has ET tech. They have craft. They can launch a galactic war. The deep state, the corporations on this planet, whoever runs this planet, that whole organization is interstellar. They're not just here. They're in the Kuiper Belt. They're on Ceres. They're on different asteroids. They're all over the place. So it isn't difficult for them to not just do a blue beam, but to actually do something. It's very simple for the deep state to use their tech, as they had done actually back around World War II, when you had the flyover of craft of the Capitol building. Those weren't extraterrestrials. Those were Nazis. So they got it. They got the equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and go back to the the Envoy program. You did a roundtable discussion with Michelle Portofria and Erica Amorina, and both of them say that they're part of the Envoy program. So why don't you just kind of like, introduce both of them or explain who they are and what a little bit about what their stories are about being part of the Envoy program.
Erica has a book called Girls Stolen. Erica has been through quite a rough patch for most of her life with the dark military here on Earth. She's been abducted. She's been bred by nefarious beings. God, she's been, raped and you name it. Mind controlled, just tortured, stalked by the military. She has evidence of that, as many do, where you have different implants in your body. She actually right now is recovering from a very, serious surgery where she has no bone on her entire side of her face because of an implant that was put in her jaw, and the infection just spread around. So she's kind of in rough shape at the moment, which is why she doesn't step forward. Michelle was also taken by the MyLabs. She was living in Connecticut at the time when I was also taken by the MyLabs. She has seen craft throughout her life. She now lives in Brazil. She has known her extraterrestrial husband for quite some time. Recently, she began to understand more about who he is. He does work for the GFW, and he's actually on Earth with Ika, working with the benevolent aspects of the military here. So Michelle had an extraterrestrial husband for quite some time. So Michelle has gone up physically many times, not only in military craft, but also in galactic craft. She has met her husband physically. That was the main one was January. She'll have to tell her own story because I kind of, my brain gets a little screwed up. But it was January. She went up physically to demand rights for the envoys. That was in January. And she's been in contact with this man for many years now. So the contact has, again, as it has for most people, significantly increased within the past few months.
And Erica also, has she been up on the ships physically?
Physically, yes. Yeah.
And like, is that like recent?
Recent.
Okay.
I say it was January. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess the question people would have is if Erica has been on the ships recently, why don't they heal her?
They are. She is being, we have many clients right now that are being healed. This is something we want to track and monitor. Because if somebody is not getting healed, right? I mean, we want evidence. We want physical contact. We want open contact. We want to be able to go on the ships. And why? That's the big question. Why can't we? So hopefully now this will change. We have, as I said, I have clients that are not only getting contact that they never had before, seeing ships, hearing voices of their significant others, male and female. We had the full contact experience of one of our clients just recently, physical contact. I have other people who have different ailments through these implants in their bodies that are now being healed. So we want to catalog all these things because we need evidence. And I tell my team all the time, I need evidence. And I know the best they got a lot of times is telepathy. It's like, well, to me, that's not enough. I need physical evidence. And I've told upstairs, I said, look, if you expect people like you, Michael, people like me and the rest of our team to be down here working for them, we need to be in meetings, or they need to come down here in meetings. We need one-on-one. We need evidence. We need to discuss this physically and have real evidence in front of us, not this bullcrap. So hopefully that'll change. Yeah.
Well, I actually did read Erica's story, her book, Girls Stolen. And I mean, it's truly shocking, the things that happened to her. And she has been through the ringer. I mean, the only person that, I know Niara Isley has been through the ringer as well. There have been others that have been put through really
Oh, yeah.
bad stuff. But she definitely has been through some heavy stuff. So I'm glad to hear that they're helping heal her, because that
Yeah.
would be very disappointing if they weren't. And
Well, and that's, yeah, part of the argument. So that was, again, part of the regressive group. They had no interest in that.
right.
Whenever we would hear these stories of, well, you're down here and you have to, you raise your vibration, and, and just, it's okay, the suffering and all that. Like that was all nefarious. So anyone who tells you that the suffering on Earth is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just supposed to happen, that was all nefarious GFW
Mm-hmm.
or Darkfleet as well.
Okay. So now, in the case of Erica Marina, she says that her former husband, or current husband, I'm not quite sure how you would regard it, is Zoran, and that he's an admiral with the Galactic Federation.
Yes.
And that Michelle says that she's also been on the ship and has seen him, and
Yes.
so both of them have seen him, and
Yes.
and I guess in your case you have traveled there etherically and seen him.
Yes, I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about Zoran.
Well,
Zoran,
I'm trying to find a proper spelling for this. Jor-L is how they say it.
Zoran. Okay.
Yeah. And he took over. He's been swamped the past, it's been a nightmare. But yeah, he took over from Ardana.
Okay.
And we've been pressuring him to, start making things work down here. We want the physical contact, and I want extraction. And we have a lot of envoys that want extraction. And he's hopefully working on it now, but not now that we're in a place where legit type activity is going to hopefully roll forward, that extractions will happen for some people, and physical contact. I have heard from another one of my team that there will be still some physical contact in June. And in fact, I had a member in England who had physical contact. And the contact is ongoing now. I don't know what her relationship is with this person, but I think we'll find out. But we are making demands still. A lot of the envoys are making demands. It's super important the envoys make demands. You can't just sit back and allow nothing to happen, because there's been a lot of nothing happening. That has to shift. And if a lot of nothing continues, that's going to have to shift. So according to Ika, a lot of nothing has stopped, and now we should be seeing more action.
Okay.
Including the mitigation of what's happening in the Middle East in order to stop World War III.
So you spoke in our first interview. You spoke about June would be the month when starseeds and envoys would start to have face-to-face physical contact with their extraterrestrial family. And of course, around the same time, you talked about the betrayal of the Galactic Federation leadership. So, and them selling out, reaching agreements with the Earth government.
Well, that's been going on for decades.
Okay. So are the physical contacts still going to happen, or is it too dangerous now or is it still too dangerous because the deep state's still out there and has all their guns and all of that?
Right. And that's some of the conversation I've had with them. Because to me, it just sounds like kick the can down the road stuff. They're always coming up with some kind of excuse. And what I was told recently was it wasn't the benevolent side, it was the regressive side that was preventing a lot of these contacts. In fact, it was the regressive GFW that had initiated that fake contact thing.
Can you explain that? uh,
But
and regressive.
they're always dropping carrot dangles. You saw that with 2023 and the supposed disclosure year. Everybody was excited in 2023.
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah,
quite
it was
clearly.
all-
That we were
that was
supposed to have disclosure.
Did you have it? No. It
So,
was
so
all,
that was really the negative,
yes.
the negative regressive side of the Galactic Federation that was putting out that information.
Yep.
Okay.
All of this, anything raise your vibration, the solar flares, all these wonderful things are happening. That's the same story we've been hearing loop for years. Actually, going back even to the 80s and 90s with the New Age movement.
Mm-hmm.
All these people who were allegedly in contact with extraterrestrials in the 80s and 90s through channeling. It was all that woo-woo. You got to, whoa, we're all gonna, it's kind of like a lot of word salad stuff. They start throwing all kinds of interdimensional language and the Metatron and all these kind of stuff that was really filling the doctrine that was produced in the 80s and 90s. That's the foundation, which was basically nefarious CIA type information. The idea that it's all wonderful upstairs, that once the humans stop being losers, they'll be able to join these fantastic ETs and they can't come near you because your vibration's too low. That's all nonsense.
Well, that's very important. What you
And
just
that
said
came
there.
through. That was so when you see that, not that you should improve yourself. That goes. It's like we all. That's something upstairs needs to learn too. How to be a better person. But anything that has to do with you being faulty and with you raising, I mean, how many solar flares do we need to? We should be non-physical by this time.
Right, yeah.
But that's. I think this is what we're trying to say here is use your analytical reasoning process. Don't believe anything. I don't even believe them half the time. I don't. I need proof. I need hard evidence. I need to see stuff happening down here. And I talk to people all the time who just almost recite scripture from somebody's book or somebody's podcast. It is like, who told? I said who told you that? Oh, Mrs. Jones. It's like, what? Where? There's no proof. You're actually just listening to somebody who could have pulled something out of thin air. You don't have any. Where's the photographs? Where is their evidence? Where is the documentation? They have none. But people spout scripture from these people, and that's been going on. And again, that's CIA. That's all the nefarious groups because they want people to follow a religion, because that could be used by the deep state when they unleash this global takeover. Based, and this is what Ika was telling me, it's going to be based on some kind of messiah or some kind of bizarre salvation thing. That's what they're going to try to unleash.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because that's exactly what I think. That's the reason why I think they elected this American Pope, Pope Leo the 14th, that he is going to play this role of kind of welcoming these alien saviors that are going to revolutionize global religion, and the Catholic Church will be a part of that. And because the Vatican has been involved in the extraterrestrial phenomenon from the very beginning, so there's no way that they would not be involved in disclosure. So so I think it'll be a salvation event. So it's really reassuring to hear Ika says the same thing.
Well, what he says, we have a lot of, he gave me the literal very, very, and I'll probably put this on my channel because it's very precise what he said, of what the new GFW is going to do. And they're going to focus. So the hotspot right now for a lot of this is the Middle East. That's going to be where they're going to launch it. They are going to be involved with frequency campaigns as well, because the mind control, where people are going to be fed or channeled information that has to do with this kind of religious thing. They're going to pull from some of the texts in that area, different types of information from the text, and they're going to channel that into people's minds. And then those people are going to come forward and start reciting, these different kinds of stories that have backing in Levant region theology. They're going to try to interfere with that. Because that's what they're planning. It's so easy. It is so easy to weaponize, and we see it everywhere. People regularly give up any analytical process. They believe anything. And the deep state knows that, and they're going to definitely exploit it through fear, through violence, through creating lots of need in the population, and then launching a global new world religion lockdown.
Okay, so if they do go ahead with this kind of like fake alien salvation event where they roll out, these angelic looking,
Yes, that was
aliens.
Well, actually, so upstairs they take some of our people, the Ahel, and they do genetic experiments. This is happening upstairs. It's not just humans that are, well, it's humans, obviously, but the Ahel have been taken for genetic manipulation. Some of them have been mind removed. They have their soul consciousness removed, and they put a nefarious being in there. So what you see in front of you isn't a Ahel, a very beautiful being, male or female, but inside is a really nefarious, perverted, nasty thing. And they've been already seated them down here on Earth. People think they're meeting with Pleiadians, and they're not. People think they're talking to a Pleiadian, and they're not. They're talking to part of the nefarious Dark Fleet CIA group.
Well, Erica Marina, she talked about that in her book, where the Greys, the Maitreya, were really good at creating these
very good
screen memories. But you're saying that they could do this at a kind of like at a mass consciousness or global level, where people are seeing beautiful angelic beings come out of a starship, meeting the Pope, shaking hands with Donald Trump. But in reality, that's a hideous being.
Oh yeah. Well, not necessarily. No, the being is the being.
It's
shell. But what's driving it, you can tell. They're really strange. I've met them. Michelle's met them. They are odd. And so when you meet in the Ahel, a real Pleiadian, they're wonderful. They're friendly. They're normal. They're human. They interact with you. But these are very strange. They're very stiff, and they're very rigid, and they have just an off-putting way about them. So because the Dark Fleet and your cabal is interstellar, they are going to use a landing fueled by their group and these fake angelic Pleiadian bodies, basically, which we're going to stop.
Okay, so that's what the deep state wants to do, or it's going to try and do.
They got a lot of things up their sleeve. That's what. So what Ika was telling me was, this is what they could do. This is what we're going to do. This is what they could do, and this is what we're going to do.
Okay, so it's going to be like a chess game. Like the deep state's going to roll out make their move, and the Galactic Federation that's been cleaned up now, it's going to make its move to nullify that.
Yes, that's what he says. Yeah.
So what's going to happen then with us, with humanity? If the deep state tries to do an alien salvation event and it gets neutralized by the Galactic Federation, do we still have official contact, or is it taken away?
That's a good question, because we're still on square one. That we backtracked, and we have been in a stagnation, even though it looked like they were moving forward. It was not the benevolence controlling disclosure. It was the cabal and their group controlling disclosure. And this has been going on since MJ12. They didn't have quite the hold while you were seeing the Millie Meyer, the Howard Menger, all the Adamski group. They were sneaking that stuff in. But then the kibosh was put on that during the late 60s, when you saw the mass contacts and their bases exploded. And then later on, towards the 70s and 80s, when you saw militarization here on this planet. So now we are playing catch up. A couple of things they're going to do first, which they told us, was to begin neutralizing, cleaning up any of the human-based tech that's running people, that's still inside people. You have your frequency or mind-controlled operations that are still there, or people start getting depressions, anhedonia, all these kinds of things. some of the illnesses that people are experiencing because of this residual gray tech that's still in their body. That they're going to try to clean up as best they can. They're doing that now. I've seen that with my clients because I hate to say it, but they're an experiment, as we all are. I haven't been hit by any MyLabs for months. So, okay, that looks good. Knock on wood. It seems to be kosher with what they're doing. Contacts are supposed to continue. So for people who have not had, they will probably not do physical contact to someone who has not had astral etheric contact yet, because it can be very disruptive to people. They seem to have a hard time with it. From what I've heard from clients who jump straight into physical contact, it can be kind of unnerving. So they're going to begin preparing people for that.
Right. Now, in your case, you've been having astral contact with Ika for decades, right?
Yeah, we both want physical contact.
Okay, so when is that going to happen?
I don't know at this point. I would never give dates, because upstairs today they say one thing and tomorrow they change the story.
Now, why is it that Michelle and Erica are having physical contact with their partners on the ships, and you're not? I mean, they're being taken there physically, or astral, and they're being taken there physically somehow, and you're being taken astrally.
I haven't been physical since I was a kid. Astral, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to, 23 years ago. He tried to come to me, but there's just no way. He'd be killed. So that was 3 years ago. So now we will find out. Again, my request upstairs is extraction.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get out of here. I want out.
Right.
So,
well, you want out, but your mission seems to be one of encouraging Galactic Envoys to come out and share their stories, because as the Galactic Envoys share their stories, then there'll be this mass consciousness awakening, because there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people that are here part of the Galactic Envoys. They've just forgotten, but if they hear this from someone, it's like, dang, the bubble can burst. 2
and 2 together through their life and say, wait a minute, I had contact, or I'm having contact now. A lot of people are actually having contact now. So there is, and that's, I think my suspicion is, and what Jorel was saying sounds legit from what we're experiencing here. There was a massive backpedaling for decades. Now, these people who I find are in their 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, are suddenly getting contact that they should have had maybe 20, 30 years ago. A lot of, I guess, it's weird, I don't have that many young clients. Almost everyone that's coming forward in our arena are, older people. 40s, 50s, 60s, I got 80s, and this kind of, so I'm looking at what he's saying, and it's kind of like, okay, well, it does sort of jive to what we are seeing in live feed here on Earth right now. So, okay, where it goes is anyone's guess, I suppose. Like I said, to me, anything that's not hard evidence is fluff. I mean, as an academic, I mean, you and me both could, I don't know, let's say, next weekend we're going to go to Saturn. Ika's going to pick us up when we go to Saturn. Well, anybody can make that story up. We could land on Saturn. Wow, wasn't that a great cafe? I really liked the music. It was so unique. Who would be able to validate that? How many people on Earth have been to Saturn?
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you this because it's something that happens to me a lot, to my wife a lot. We often wake up and there are bruises on our body that weren't there before. And it's just like, what in the world happened? We don't consciously remember anything. So, and I know people get taken up in the sleep. So what's happening if you wake up with bruises on your body and you feel exhausted after sleeping for 6-7 hours? Is that where you may have like had your astral body taken out and you're out there doing stuff,
Yeah.
or would it be a physical, more physical thing?
It can be both. That would be dark military.
Oh, so dark military does the
Yeah.
physical abduction.
Yeah. Yeah. They do a phasing where they can freeze time.
Okay.
Now we get into they have the ability, and any real physicist who's working in like the new physics, not the gatekeeper physics, but the real physics, they have the ability to do time slips. That's been going on for a long time. Because that's obviously the cabal is interstellar. They have access to highly advanced extraterrestrial tech, because we're all extraterrestrials. There isn't an us and them. Earth is being controlled by an alliance of negative extraterrestrials. Some of those negative extraterrestrials are Terran.
A Terran.
Yeah, it's a type of ET, you know?
Mm-hmm. Kind of like deep state operatives who are star seeds themselves, but they may be Draco Reptilian or Maitreya Gray star seed.
Oh, they're working hand. That's all their friends. That's all part of their tech and military alliance.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, what they did was push them out enough that they weren't going to be seen as a particularly negative, powerful threat in this area. But they had made arrangements with the others, and they said to them, this was some of the arrangements. They said, okay, you guys, you can, the corporations, what we call it, it's corporations, it's intergalactic corporation. That's Darkfleet that runs this planet. This is their planet, and they use it as they wish. What they were doing on this planet is illegal in galactic law, but it was allowed to happen. Why? That's the question. Why was it allowed to happen? Because even though, let's say you and I, we write a contract up where we're going to rob banks. Well, just because we have a contract doesn't make it legal. You can't rob banks. You can't sell beings for sex or slavery or food intergalactically. But yet they were doing that. And what we were told was that, oh, well, we have to allow them to do that because they made an arrangement during Eisenhower, right, with the MJ-12. That holds zero water in galactic law. So why is that being used as an excuse? Something illegal is always illegal. And just because you sign a contract doesn't suddenly make it kosher.
Right. Okay.
That's why I'm like, what? Unless that never, and this is the question some people have asked, right? If there's these wonderful benevolent ETs floating around up there, why were they watching while Earth was being used to sell illegal goods? And they saw it happen. Mm-hmm. And they it's making sense.
But it's very interesting that you mentioned that the Earth is run by this kind of, I guess, this corporate conglomerate. That's something that I came across during my Corey Good days. He was talking about the interplanetary corporate conglomerate and how much power that had. But it seems that or something like it is still running our planet, even though we do have white hats and this kind of this Earth Alliance trying to do the right thing, supposedly working with the Galactic Federation of Worlds.
And they were.
But this interplanetary corporate conglomerate still has the power, even though the Draco Reptilians and the Orion Greys have been driven off. This corporate conglomerate remains here because those are the power structures that forced that made the Earth Alliance reach an agreement with the Galactic Federation. Is that correct?
Right. I think now to be clear, the Matra and the Greys and the negative Draco, right, are very bad people. And they're not. But they were scapegoated when they were hand in hand with this Dark Fleet arrangement. They were best friends. They were best buds. So removing them is beneficial, but the intergalactic dark fleet corporations, whatever, the military industrial complex, is all kinds of names for the same thing, has all that stuff. They have all that tech. So I've been told that the main arm of this group has all been infiltrated except some parts of Big Pharma. If you go back, and this is what I was talking with my meeting with my other friends on Friday night, the man that's in contact with 11th density beings and the 9. He says, do you remember? He said, do you remember when the bankers went down to Antarctica? He says, and those idiot Pleiadians said, hey guys, do you guys want to like stop doing bad things? And they said, no. And the Pleiadians said, oh, well, that's okay. They were supposed to collapse the banking system. Now, what universe do you ask a dangerous, violent, evil group if they'd like to stop doing what they're doing without any repercussion? What are they going to say? No. They said no. And then that's your negative. There were a lot of negative Pleiadians that were part of this dark part of the GFW. It was those negative, dark factions that went to Antarctica to meet with their best friends, who were the cabal bankers. That's why they were so nice to them. And it blows a lot of our minds when that
I remember that. I remember that pretty clearly, how it was described that, there was a certain, let's just say, contactee that described how there were these meetings in Antarctica and agreements were reached and all of that, and there was an evacuation of Antarctica, and that the cabal was taken there, and they were forced to make agreements to give up. But yeah, nothing really happened of that.
Nothing happened. So I don't work with, I work with my group. I don't work, other people's information is their information. I have a separate group who gives me information. So it was around that time that the arrests of the benevolent GFW officers and operatives was conducted, because they were starting to say, whoa, and they were silenced.
That's interesting how you say that, because I always like to find a correspondence in terms of Earth events for galactic events, and so if the good guys were being arrested by the bad guys, that would correspond to the whole January 6th thing, where the people that were trying to point out that the elections were stolen in the United States, they were being imprisoned. They were being tried and all of that. So so there's a correspondence there, which means that what you're saying, actually, to me, it has validity, because it's like there's a real life event on Earth where good guys are being imprisoned for protesting against something that the bad guys did. The same thing was happening upstairs.
Very subtle. When you build a story, then the pieces fall. Because I'm asking, how could this happen? Are they that dumb, right? You can't. So I'm fighting back with them. I'm saying, you know what? I don't care. I don't treat them like I yell at them. They know me. I go up there. I swear at them. I yell at them, because I don't see them the same way. A lot of these they're not gods to me. And it was very, very subtle. It was a mafia that started to start taking over the organization, but they were telling everybody else. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over decades. Subtly, they were like, well, this might be a good idea if we do this, or, well, you don't want to do that because they're not ready yet, or it's going to mess up their economic system and the whole world will collapse, and we don't want that. So we really love them and we want to make sure they're all happy. And they were coming up with all these twists and turns and all these things. And they had made that arrangement with the Dark Fleet for drip disclosure, which was never going to, I mean, at some point, that it had to happen, because you can't lie forever. But I think by that time, the Dark Fleet the cabal, the industrial military complex would have cracked down so severely on this planet, it would have been really ugly. So it was all subtle. And then geez, well, how come the really smart guys in these, Andromedans and Igoroth and all these blah, blah, fancy people, right? Were they sold to say, how could they not understand? And they were told, oh, they're so far out of touch. And this is what Erica discovered when she went up in January. They had no idea what was going on the ground down here. No idea.
Mm-hmm.
Curiously, there was a group of very high level beings, the 9 and some 11th density beings. I can't remember their name. He gave me the name of it. Who were onto it. And they were pushing the other groups, like, you got to do something. You got to, and they didn't. They just like, we'll have council after council. Maybe in 50 years after we've discussed it over and over and over again, we'll make some move. That's what was happening. It was a mess. It's like the blind leading the blind,
Right. Now, Ika, has he said anything to you about the Anunnaki, and in particular, Ea or Enki, that he's recently returned and wants to make amends for all the bad things his half-brother did, and he's given humanity, he's given US Space Command certain technology, including the original Adamic DNA blueprint, that our genetics can be restored to the original perfect Adam and all of that. Do you know anything about that?
I have people who know of Ea. They work with him. I have never personally talked to him. I have no information on that.
Okay.
No one's mentioned it. I mean, I'm all for it. Is what I feel from the group that I work with is that, yes, he is involved. There is a being called Ea. I don't know if he's trying to make amends or anything. I've never spoken to him. They've never told me anything about it. I don't feel like there's a lot of different major players. You have Vile and all these different people involved. No one.
I'm sorry, who was that? Who did you just say?
Valthor. Valthor.
Oh, okay, Valthor, right.
There's a lot. It's not just one person. There's a bunch of people that are involved with this. He is involved. I don't know what level he is or what's been done. Was he involved with the cleanup? I don't know. I'd have to ask. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to spend the last 10, 15 minutes just discussing this message that you got from Ika on June 14. And we've already touched on some elements of that. But do you, I don't know if you want to read parts of it or you want to just summarize it.
It's better if I read it because I wrote it. I'm going to say it correctly from what he said this morning.
Okay.
So this is what he said. He wanted to thank you for your work, as well. I'll send that to you in an email. And let's see. He said, well, he was saying things like, we don't need another sanitized disclosure stagnated by lies, intimidation, and exclusion. He says we need justice, centered truth, and inclusion. So he says, what you're seeing now, he says, this is not a war of nations. It is not a war of ET and Earth. We are all one. It is a war of thrones long broken. So you see, for the Iran-Israel conflict, he says, the ones who pull the strings of Iran and Israel now are not men of spirit, but architects of division, feeding off a cycle that never ends because the ritual was never broken. The altar is still active, but it trembles. So with the traitors, and he meant GFW, removed, the field is shifting. We now move closer. No more will we stand idle while earthborn proxies play God with nuclear fire and twisted philosophy. He says, the false Messiah project, which we talked about, the false Messiah project has been fractured. The chorus of lies disrupted, but some still seek to invoke an alien redeemer, one who brings peace through submission to gods. Reject this, he says. You are not to worship, you are to remember who you were. He says, one of the darkest timelines being prepared by deep cabal factions involves staging a divine intervention or messianic event in the Middle East, using holographic projections, mind control tech, manipulated prophecy fulfillment based on old religions. He says, a quiet operation is underway to dismantle these ritual grids, cutting off energy to those who still seek war for metaphysical harvest. These grids feed the illusion of divine vengeance and global purification. The GFW will likely use specific emissaries to target these sites and free souls bound to ancient contracts. This must be done in silence, or it risks igniting chaos in religious sectors. So he says the Mideast is a dynamite zone. He says the GFW will handle this in the following way: secretly interfering with escalation, dismantling the ancient energy grids fueling the conflict, blocking the alien messiah deception, forcing Earth Alliance accountability, extracting or shielding envoys and seeded souls from the blast zone. And he says the groups that were involved, we had mentioned the Draco-based auxiliary fleet, previously offering covert tech to the deep state. He says the Mitra groups tied to the Zionist ritual agenda, that's collapsed. Hybridized Anunnaki Pleiadian mimics attempting to stage Messiah descent, which we talked about, with blue light ships, that has been blocked. The Federation's stance has shifted because it was forced to. What we once observed, we now must actively intercept. The time of being a neutral witness has ended. And he's kind of given a, he's kind of saying that was bullshit, right? He says the official position is stabilization through covert interception. The GFW no longer upholding full non-interference policy with respect to Earth-based kinetic warfare. The ancient Middle Eastern corridor is now designated a critical zone. The GFW, through its restructured strategic council, which we talked about, is engaging in orbital interdictions of off-world tech transfers to both Iran and Israeli defense programs, psyop disruption of manipulated messianic visions seeded by non-human factions, deployment of veiled agents to intercept potential cabal, false flags, chemical, nuclear, or divine event in origin. Internal GFW mandate shift, he says. A new internal protocol has been approved, granting selective authorization to high-ranking members of the GFW, the officers, what have you, to override older Federation non-engagement policies if civilian casualties would exceed threshold. Ancient grid lines are at risk of weaponization. A false cosmic savior scenario is being prepared. And he says they are going to prioritize protection of grid-linked envoys. So the Federation now recognizes that certain humans in Israel and Iran, Lebanon, and Syria are key holders holding ancient DNA sequences connected to the pre-Sumerians. These individuals, many who are unaware still, are being targeted through psychic destabilization, financial entrapment, or enlistment. The new GFW stance is to intervene covertly to protect them and recover encoded knowledge they carry. He says, we lost too many in the old wars by watching instead of acting. This time, we retrieve our own. So tactical silence, so it wouldn't be really open, but ground presence is activated. So the GFW will not publicly disclose intervention in this war zone. However, several commanders have been assigned planetary shadows, meaning their vessels will be cloaked in near-Earth atmospheres ready to disable advanced kinetic strikes, extract envoys in direct danger, and disrupt cabal-orchestrated alien attacks intended to trigger global unity under a one-world front. Now he says, we are not here to save nations. We are here to collapse the altar of sacrificial prophecy. If Earth must be reborn, it will be without the blood of manipulated gods and the catastrophic one-world enslavement initiative. The war between Israel and Iran is not just a national conflict. It is a final move in a long-standing ritual intended to trigger apocalyptic allegiance to false divine figures. Our role now is to contain and diffuse this, to prevent stage disclosure events, and to dismantle false prophecy infrastructure. Ika says, we stand between the child and the sacrificial altar. That is our command. Psionic reclamation will also be put into place. So the function here is to stop psychic intervention, envoy shielding, and prophetic field collapse. So they're doing a lot of the interdimensional stuff, that the mind control, inserting psionic harmonics into dream space of those used for spiritual manipulation. So the deep state and any of their operatives use that, as you notice yourself, Michael, when you're taken up, they're going to block that, in disarming false voice of God frequencies in holy sites. So there it is. I mean,
well,
yeah.
that's quite a lot of information there, and I mean, we could do a whole interview just on that
Well,
particular.
that's it, though, really. I mean, that's all I know. I can't add, anymore.
Well, there are some things in there, some elements that I just wanted to kind of touch on that I thought were very interesting. One was he mentioned that the Galactic Federation, or the new Galactic Federation of Worlds, is not following non-intervention policy in this Middle East war, and I assume that means that they'll do things like intervene if Israel sends nuclear weapons against Iran.
Yeah. Well, they're going to intervene more than that too.
Oh, in what way?
Let me see. I asked him if you're going to take out them. He said, yeah, if you see some of the if they're really throwing some of these kinetic weaponry, missiles, things like that, they will take them out.
Oh, okay. Okay. So even
people on the ground won't notice anything. You'll just see the bombs go up, whatever they send up, and they'll use their DEWs to just dismantle. Okay. Which is done actually. So okay. The GFW was never necessarily in non-intervention. It was just corrupted. So they would do things because they did want to stop nuclear war, because that is a no bueno upstairs. So you did have situations where you saw the dismantling or the neutralization of nuclear sites.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ika also mentioned several emissaries being appointed or chosen or operating. So you want to just elaborate on, what those emissaries would be doing?
I don't know. They're sleeping emissaries. They don't know who they are.
Okay.
So they're going to just sort of protect. They're protecting the envoys now. We have quite a bit of protection around us. Yeah.
So the Galactic Federation right now protecting the envoys, but there is also several emissaries that are still asleep.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, and it doesn't make much sense to me, is that of all the up to millions of envoys, how many emissaries can there be?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Because the word emissary means that, well, this is a person who represents the Galactic Federation or some organization. So, I mean, why out of the thousands or millions of envoys would there only be one of them that would be an emissary when all of them have contact with the Galactic Federation?
I've never heard that. I can't validate or I've never heard that. The only places I understand would be where you have, like where I'm from, where you have very stable planets that are pretty much, zen. Mm-hmm. You might have a smaller number of emissaries because there isn't so much of a political strife. My understanding in this situation is, depending on where this goes, they will appoint more if need be. Okay. But okay. I've never heard that. No.
Okay. All right. So out of the pool of galactic envoys out there, that where there's a need, they will appoint several emissaries to play kind of like unique, important roles. But it's not just going to be one; it's going to be several.
Right. Those envoys knew that before they seeded. They're already like that. They're already like that. It's just because of all this mess up. A lot of people don't know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to start. So what they'll do is they know who they are and they're protecting them, because the deep state knows who they are too, and they want to kill them. So while there was a lot of hanky panky going on, you have to kind of watch your operatives. And I'm sure we've lost many. So it's a matter of. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned also the Anunnaki mimics and the psionic events.
I was surprised when he said that. Yeah.
Yeah, explain that.
I don't know. He just said it. Yeah, I guess that was one of the old plans, was for this messianic event of the false gods. There were those shells of Pleiadians, which they were going to use to come down and be, hey, we're angels. Yeah.
Okay. And behind that Pleiadian shell, there would be an Anunnaki consciousness? Is that
no. What I got from him was, I'm like, he said there were, factions of them that were a little bit fishy. Yeah.
Factions of the Anunnaki that are a little bit fishy. Okay.
Just like there's Pleiadians that are really fishy. I mean.
Okay. All right. And interesting that he also mentioned that there are individuals in the Middle East that have frequency keys for off-world technology that are being highly sought out by the deep state. Actually, I just this morning I actually did an update with JP, and he was abducted by the deep state because they wanted to have him. They wanted to use his frequencies to activate a space ark.
Oh, that's what they absolutely want to do. That's going to be
right. So that's going on in the Middle East as well.
Yes, it'll be all around. Yeah. Well, right now the focus is on the Middle East, which is where the deep state is trying to get all its acting. It's
interesting, because I don't know of any Middle Easterners or people living there that are talking about being able to enter arcs and all of that. You have people like Jean-Charles Moyen, and you have also JP talking about entering arcs, and there are others. But I haven't come across anyone from the Middle East.
I think it's too dangerous for them to step forward.
Okay.
That would be my suspicion, because I know that the Middle East is one of their extreme hot zones. Where contact probably won't be happening, where people won't really be having physical contact. And if they do it there, it would, especially now, I mean, it would have to be very complicated, like a time slip.
Well, in the update I did with JP, he said that in the next 2 weeks, there's a chance that they can go forward with this kind of fake alien savior scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's similar to what Ika just said.
Yeah, I mean, they're ready, but we can't. What the deep state does is sort of, again, it's a very, very intricate chess game. But now that we're cleaned up, I think the deep state's going to be a little nervous. So it's
okay. Now that the Galactic Federation's been cleaned up and the compromised elements removed, the deep state might be nervous moving forward with this fake cosmic savior event.
They got nothing to lose, so they're going to go all out. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I know we're prepared for them to go. They want to bring this place down. Okay.
Well, fantastic. Well, this has been a really fascinating interview, Andrea. So, so people that want to learn more about what you're doing and what your videos or become a client, what do they have to do?
Well, they can write me on Facebook just under my name, Andrea Martin. That's a great way to contact me through my business website, which is growingupalien.com, or through my YouTube channel as well. So,
and the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Growing Up Alien.
We're looking for people to step forward and give us their information, because that's all we got, until these guys upstairs decide to, yeah. So
okay, so you're always on the lookout for new more envoys to come forward and share their stories.
And people who don't think they're envoys, anyone who has any information that they think we can use, we want to hear from you.
Fantastic. Well, you're doing great work. I really appreciate you sharing that update from Ika, and I look forward to staying in touch and learning more.
Well, hopefully we'll be meeting on a ship shortly. That's my goal.
Okay.
Right.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.